Hi, good morning, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started in just a few minutes. We're just giving people some time to log in. Our numbers are still going up, so we'll get started in about 2 minutes. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Big Business Interruption Grant Round 2 application walkthrough webinar. We will get started in about 2 minutes. Good morning, folks. My name is James O'Neill. I'm with the Illinois Business Immigration Coalition. We're going to go ahead and get started in about 1 minute, just giving people an opportunity to log on. We currently have about 500 people logged on, and our numbers are still going up, so we're just going to give a little bit more time. Hi, folks. Good morning. We're going to go ahead and get started in about 30 seconds here, just giving people an opportunity to continue logging on, and then we'll go ahead and get started with our Business Interruption Grant Round 2 program. Good morning, folks. Let's go ahead and get started with our program today. My name is James O'Neill. I'm the Director of Suburban Outreach for the Illinois Business Immigration Coalition. Thank you for everybody for joining us today. We had over 1,300 people register for this webinar, and we're very excited to have all of you and share our resources with you. And now, to get us started, it is my pleasure to introduce Larry Luster, ABIC Small Business Recovery Manager, who will moderate today's webinar. Welcome, Larry.
Thanks, James, and thank you all for joining us. My name is Larry Luster, and I'm the Small Business Recovery Manager at the American Business Immigration Coalition. We're honored to partner with DCO, the Chicago Urban League, the Resurrection Project, and the Greater Auburn Gresham Development Center, and all of our local partners that are providing technical assistance for businesses across our state. Our purpose is to provide direct technical assistance to these small businesses and independent contractors to help them survive the pandemic and not be forced to shut their doors. Today we have over 1,300 small businesses attending our webinar, stretching from Rockford to Effingham, East Peoria, South Holland, Chicago, Waukegan, and everywhere throughout the state. So just applaud yourself for all attending. With winter coming, we know that many of you are making tough decisions whether to stay open and how to stay open. And we see you, we hear you, and we're definitely here to help you. Today's webinar is one step to help you quickly apply for the $220 million grants that are available. An important reminder, it's better to have a complete application than a fast application. I repeat, make sure that your application is completed completely rather than just trying to move your application up in queue. And that's why we're here. So if you need help, please reach out to our technical assistance partners. Their contact information will be on the last slide. And if you have any questions during the webinar, you'll notice there's a text box on your screen that you can ask questions, where you can ask questions. With that, I'm honored to introduce Michael Negron, Assistant Director of DCO, to provide an overview of the big goals and timelines. Please welcome Michael.
Thank you, and good morning, everybody. This is Michael Negron, Assistant Director for DCEO. I'm very happy to talk to everyone today about this program that we're excited to be implementing. I also want to thank and recognize everyone that's here today. We know at the state that this pandemic has really placed unprecedented pressure on businesses, and particularly on minority-owned businesses. We've weathered recessions over the years, and while past recessions hurt because, among many reasons, but you're losing customers are losing jobs, they're not coming in, loans are harder to secure, and other issues that put stress on businesses. In this environment, we have all of that, and in addition, we have customers who are reluctant to visit businesses because they're concerned for their safety. We have government public health requirements that make it more difficult or more expensive to run your businesses. So we know that this is a historic amount of challenges that our businesses are facing, and that's why we're very happy that we have this program that we can offer, the Business Interruption Grant Program, or the BIG program as we call it. This is a program that Governor Pritzker and the General Assembly established in a budget passed in June. It makes use of federal CARES Act funds to offer $540 million in grants to small businesses to help them meet the losses due to the COVID-19 recession. Half of those funds are for licensed child care providers in recognition that we need to support these providers in order for parents to get back to work. And then, of course, the other half, which is what we're here to talk about, is for small businesses. We've implemented the first wave of this over the summer, back in July, and then with awards made in August. And we provided $49 million in grants to 2,800 businesses in 400 communities across the state. Of those businesses, about half were owned by minority or were minority-owned businesses. Half of those were in areas that we refer to disproportionately impacted areas. These are areas that the General Assembly directed us to create where we factor in zip codes where there have been high COVID case rates and hospitalizations, as well as other indicators of poverty. So this is a mechanism for viewing this program through an equity lens and making sure that we're supporting those businesses in communities that may have been struggling before the pandemic, and then both the health and the economic impacts of the pandemic have hit these communities even harder. So half of the funds from the first round went to businesses in these disproportionately impacted areas, or DIAs as we call them. And that first round was particularly focused on restaurants, personal services, gyms, and businesses in those disproportionately impacted areas that had also suffered from some property damage due to recent civil unrest. So the first round was successful. We're very excited to launch the second round with the application was posted last week, and we're hoping in partnership with ABIC and our other technical assistance partners that we're going to be able to provide additional help on the front end so that businesses can apply for these grants and submit complete and effective applications. So with that, again, I want to thank everyone here. I want to thank ABIC for hosting this webinar, and then I'm happy to turn it over now to Kara Bader, who is the Chief of Staff for DCEO, who can talk in more detail about eligibility and how this round of applications is going to work. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Michael. And again, we're very happy to introduce Kara Bader, the Chief of Staff at DCEO, to provide an overview of the eligibility. Kara, please.
Thank you, Larry, and thank you, Michael. Thank you, Brad. Thank you, everyone with the ABIC team and all of the businesses that have joined today. We're really excited to give you some detailed information about the next round of the BIG program, which will be dispersing more than $200 million in remaining funds for small businesses across the state. This is an exciting opportunity, and we're eager to get these resources flowing to support businesses that continue to experience needs due to the pandemic. As Michael mentioned, the application opened towards the end of last week, and we have more than $200 million to disperse to businesses across the state that have experienced losses due to the pandemic. More than half of these funds are earmarked for businesses downstate. These include counties outside of the 5 Northeast, and Collier counties, and those are counties that did not receive their own allocation of federal coronavirus relief funds. Additionally, $70 million from this round will be invested in businesses that are located in the disproportionately impacted areas that Michael mentioned. And you can visit our website at DCEO to see a map of disproportionately impacted areas to learn whether or not your business is eligible for this set aside. That is based on a zip code basis, and so if you are in a DIA, please take care to ensure that you have indicated your business location zip code on the application correctly. Additionally, $60 million is prioritized for businesses in heavily impacted industries, such as indoor recreation, theaters and performing arts centers that have limited ability to operate at all until there's a vaccine, and other significantly impacted industries that may not have an ability to resume until there's a vaccine or until it is safe to gather in larger numbers than it has been over the past few months. The remaining funds will be available to any small business meeting our eligibility factors located in any part of the state. This is the largest program that we are aware of in Illinois that has provided the potential for funds to any small business, and we're excited and want you to be supported in applying as your business and ensuring that your peers within the industry also have the resources that they need to apply. Our grant administration partner in this round is Accion, and Brad is on the call with us today, and you'll hear from him a little bit later. The key eligibility factors for this round are businesses that have an annual revenue of less than $20 million. We're looking at 2019 revenue in that case, and they must have experienced losses due to COVID. For-profit businesses and nonprofit businesses are eligible in this round, and our grant sizes will be calculated based on revenue losses and expenses over the 2 months that are submitted in the application. Grant sizes will be scaled and flexible to these losses and range from $5,000 to a maximum of $150,000. As has been indicated within the statute that the General Assembly passed to design the program, we will be prioritizing businesses that have not received PPP or other forms of emergency aid from the CARES Act, businesses located in DIAs, as we mentioned, businesses that have less than $5 million in annual revenue, and businesses that have been subject to an additional mitigation measure due to COVID resurgence. And so over the last few weeks, we know that within IDPH's Region 7, there was a period of resurgence mitigations, as well as Region 4 in the Metro East area. And so we definitely encourage businesses within those regions to apply. As I mentioned previously, there are heavily impacted industries that are subject to able to access an additional set aside of funds. These include event spaces, music venues, performing arts venues, indoor recreation and amusement parks, movie theaters, museums, and private charter transportation systems. We do have additional priority categories that will not access the $60 million in set-aside funds, but will be receiving priority review for the remaining $140 million, and those are businesses that continue to experience dramatic losses, not only because of the economic fallout of COVID, but because of their compliance with safety measures that we know are keeping our residents across the state safe. And so that will include independently owned retail, restaurants and bars, fitness centers, industries and businesses that support tourism-related activities, and the organizations that support the services and creation for arts and events. And so those are organizations that maybe don't run an event center themselves, but do create content that is often displayed as a performing art and has largely been delayed or canceled for the rest of the year. We're very excited to be partnering with ABIC as well as their partners, the Resurrection Project, the Urban League, Greater Auburn Gresham, and a number of partners throughout the state to ensure that businesses have technical assistance with completing their application and have a direct connection to DCEO to be able to get any of their questions answered so that they feel supported and are able to apply with success. As Larry has indicated at the top, and we will say as many times as we can, your best chance of receiving a grant is to submit a complete and accurate application. We will be reviewing on a rolling basis with these prioritization factors in mind. And so incomplete applications that require additional outreach are the greatest chance of getting delayed. And so, we want to make sure that you have the information you need to successfully apply. And in addition to ABIC and their partners listed here today, we also have our DCEO First Stop Hotline, our network of 42 small business development centers throughout the state, our constituent liaisons through the Office of Minority Economic Empowerment, and our Team Red Regional Economic Development Liaisons. We invite you to visit the DCEO webpage where contact information for each of these liaisons is available. And I know that Larry will be sharing contact information for our big technical assistant partners at the conclusion of this presentation.
Thanks so much, Kara. Sorry.
Yes, thank you. The last thing I'll just link on is that obviously the application is open now and these grants will be funded on a rolling basis. Information is here regarding the ability to submit questions directly to Accion, our administrator. That information form is included on our big application website, as well as in the application itself. Like I've reiterated, the ability to submit questions and get those answered ahead of time is your greatest chance of successfully submitting and receiving a grant quickly. So the application is open now. We expect to begin reviewing and funding applications, but funding awards within the next 2 weeks. We very much appreciate everyone who has joined us today, and thanks.
Thank you so much, Carol. We appreciate you walking through the eligibility. Next, we're going to hear from Brad McConnell, the President and CEO of Accion, to provide a walk through the actual application. So, Brad, go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. This is Brad McConnell. I'm the CEO of Accion, serving Illinois and Indiana. We're really grateful to be able to participate in this program and on this call today, and grateful to partner with ABIC, with the state, and with all of the people who are seeking to provide these funds. And most importantly, really eager to serve as many small business owners as we can, because we know how hard all of you are working in order to keep your businesses going in this incredibly difficult time. So my role here is just to spend a few minutes talking about the things to have top of mind as you're filling out the application. So I'm going to start with just a few introductory points, and then we'll show 4 different pictures for particular moments in the application process that are worth dwelling over just for a moment. So first, and can't emphasize this enough, anybody who's interested in applying, please do if you have revenues of less than $20 million for your business. So in order to find the application, if you Google DCEO big, you'll find it. There's a landing page that I think the state has done a really good job in putting up, so that in one place you can see the background information that Kara was just describing, plus find the links to the English and Spanish versions of the application, plus have the links available to you for the help desk, English and Spanish, so that you, if you have a question, you can just fill out a very simple form to get that question put into the Accion team, and we can respond to that then very quickly for you on any specific issues that are just for your application. Let me say next that any time that we have some sort of technical issue with the application, we're working around the clock to get those issues fixed. So far, we've had technical issues on the last Thursday when we launched. There were 2 particular items that we found in the initial rush of the applications, which we addressed very quickly. And then again, yesterday, we ran into overall site capacity issues, which we've now resolved overnight. So for those who were applying yesterday and frustratingly kept getting an error that the capacity had been reached, that has been addressed, and now we're back to receiving applications in full. Anytime we find issues like that with the application, we will work nonstop in order to get them addressed so that you're able to successfully apply. So we've had a little over 8,000 applications in so far, of which 272 have come in this morning. And so therefore, we're really thankful that the word is getting out. We'll really encourage everyone to continue to spread the word, and you yourself as an applicant to go through this process and make sure that you get the help that you need. But I guess the final thing I'll say as an introductory matter before we start talking about the application itself is just to reiterate that it doesn't make any difference if you apply, say, yesterday or today or tomorrow. All of the applications that are submitted this week will all be dealt with together in no particular order. We're going to run a lottery on all the applications that come in per week. What is important and what is crucially important is that all of the data that we require in the application and all the documents that we require in the application are all submitted at the time of application. Because if we can't figure out, because of some of the fields not being filled in or some of the documents not being uploaded, exactly how to evaluate your application, that, no surprise, will delay your ability to be able to be judged eligible and then to receive funds. So can't emphasize that enough. Appreciate everyone who's on the call reiterating that. We really want to provide the funds that we can to all eligible applicants, but in order for us to figure out if we're eligible or not, we need to have all the fields filled in accurately and the documents uploaded. So with that, let's look at the application itself. So again, 4 visuals here. The first is what you'll experience once you click on that link within the DCEO homepage to begin the application. So the very first thing you'll see is just a welcome introductory screen. You click start after that, and then you'll be brought to this applications instruction page, which I think you see in front of you. And so again, this is a repeat of the basic details that we're looking for in this application. And there's links out to further eligibility criteria that you can see there, which just launches a PDF file to allow you to read in more detail that eligibility criteria. But importantly, just know that all of these different buckets, set-asides, criteria, and all of that, we've structured the application so that all you as a small business owner need to do is fill out the application accurately and completely. We then will have all the details that we require in order to then figure out which pools and pots you're eligible for, and we will then come back to you directly on that. So you do not need to know as an applicant exactly how you fit in to all of the different opportunities. We'll handle that for you, so long as you populate that application fully and completely and accurately. So that first look for application instructions, that's what you see on the screen here, and that's what you experience right away. So the second thing that you will see, which should come up here, I think, on your screen shortly, is the beginnings of what you're going to be asked to populate. And so what you'll be asked to populate in part is, in the industry in which you operate, how does your operations fit within some of these criteria? And so, for example, you'll be asked, are you a for-profit or are you nonprofit? What general industry are you in? There's a drop-down list there for you to select from. And that is inclusive of essentially all big buckets of industries, regardless of whether it's relevant for a particular set-aside in this program or not. And then there are some specific questions about these pots that we've been talking about, which the legislature has focused on so that we can then make sure that those who are even more impacted than most, and we recognize that everyone has been impacted by what we've experienced as the pandemic began, that we know exactly how to put you into the right pot. So the heavily impacted industries drop-down list will allow you to select from those which Kara had described earlier that we're looking for there. Then there's another list industry-wide where you can select from if it's more appropriate for you. If you're not in a heavily impacted industry, but you are in one of these other industries, through that drop-down, you can select one of those. We then ask for a rough approximation for, first, your indoor space capacity, whether it's less than or greater than 100 people. Just give us a sense for the size of your operation. And then we ask further, are you operating in another set of industries and activities, again, just to figure out in drop-down fashion without you having to write up a narrative or anything, so in an efficient way, how to fit you into all the different sides we have available. And then we ask for a percentage of what proportion of your work is in the particular industry that you just described. Is it up to, say, 25%? Is it 40%? Is it 80%? Is it 100%? So these are the kinds of detailed questions, which again, should be just pick from the drop-downs rather than a complicated set of writing or explanations or anything like that we're going to ask you to help us with so we can understand your application and your business really carefully. So then it depends on what you've told us about your business as to which documents we're going to ask for you to upload. So the application form has been structured to be responsive to the type of business that you're in an attempt to minimize confusion that otherwise you might face, where you're thinking, well, hold on, I only have this certain set of documents that I'm able to upload, but this other type of business has this other set of documents that they need to upload. So how do I know where I go? Well, what we're trying to do is help you with that through the structure of the application itself. So just for one example, if you specified that you are a business that is not in a heavily impacted industry, but instead you're a business that has suffered significant losses, say independent retail, for example, we will then prompt you to upload a number of documents that then allow us to assess the size of your revenue losses. So for example, you'll see in front of you that among the files that will be asked to upload are your signed 29 tax return, business bank statements from 2019 and 2020 for the same months, in this case, July and August, so that then we can compare pre-pandemic and post-pandemic revenues on those bank statements. And we'll ask for a signed W-9. You'll be prompted for each one of the items that are here. And therefore, what we'll ask you to do is just select by clicking on Choose File, the file that we're looking for from your computer. And then when you select that file and click Upload, then the document will then be saved along with your application. So a couple specific points here. First is that if you don't have your signed 2019 tax return, either because you just started your business in December or January, or because you got an extension from the IRS and you haven't filed that yet, there's an option for you a little bit later in the application to tell us that. And if you don't have that signed return, then we'll ask a couple other different questions in order to account for that. But we highly encourage you that if you have filed that federal tax return, please do, and signed it, of course, please do upload the entirety of that file so that we can review that in full. One more point on tax returns. If you're a sole proprietor or an independent contractor and you haven't filed a separate business tax return, but instead you just filed as an individual personal tax return with the IRS, that's okay. Just make sure that you upload that in full, because we're going to be specifically looking for the Schedule C within that personal tax return that gives us all the information that we need about you as an independent business. And so again, we'll take whatever you filed with the federal government as your signed tax return in 2019 and deal with it on that basis, so long as you provide us with the entirety of that file. So you'll be prompted item by item for what to upload when you click that Choose File button. And I think if there's any questions that you have about how to do that, exactly what files I should be uploading at some unique circumstances as a small business owner, then please use the help desk link in either English or Spanish in order to ask those questions, and we'll provide quick response to you so that you know exactly what to upload so your application will be complete. So finally, once you've completed all the fields and you've uploaded all of the documents, the fourth and final thing that we'll just show you here is that at the end of the application, we're going to be asking for you to certify that you understand all of the requirements of the grant if you're selected. So there's a detailed list of those certifications provided by a click, and you'll see that click where the hyperlink is in that blue box for certifications and requirements. And then on screen, you'll be asked to just use your mouse or your finger if you have a touchpad to just put your signature in the way that you see it there. And then if you have particularly large files in the aggregate more than 25 meg, then we give you another option to allow you to drag and drop additional files that were too big to do via the normal way if you get that error. And so you can just click that. Did you have an issue submitting your required documents because of a size limit? If you just select yes there, you'll then be given an option to add your files additionally through an additional link that will be presented to you. If you need to save and come back later, you can click that Save and Resume Later button, and that will allow you to do so. But then once you're done, click Submit Form, and you'll be given a confirmation message that your form has been accepted. And then from there, we'll take it from there. We'll go through the applications again on a weekly basis and be on a rolling basis, continually confirming with small businesses who've applied if you've become not just eligible, but approved, and that the funds will be on the way. We're going to be collecting your business bank account information in the application itself so that we do not have to delay the provision of funds to you if we deem that your application is eligible. We'll just notify you the money's on the way. And you'll see that then via electronic transfer arriving in your bank account. So I'm going to stop there. I'll hand it back to Larry because then we can move to questions. But again, thanks to all of you for running good businesses, for being patient with this process, and for participating today so that you can learn more about how we can be helpful to you.
Brad, thanks so much for your presentation. Next, we're going to bring back up James so we can answer some of the questions that were put into the chat box. And if you have any additional questions, please enter those into the chat box and we can try to address those with the remaining time.
Yeah, thank you, Larry. Before we get started with Q&A, I want to make a couple of quick announcements. Yes, this webinar is being recorded, and we will send out a recording of it to everybody once we're completed here and we download it off of our software. Two, the slides that we're using right now, you should be able to download them if you go to the Resources tab that you see on your panel in front of you. So if you go to that Resources tab, you should be able to download a PDF of the slides, but we will be sending out both a copy of the slides and a recording of the webinar when we're done here today. Last announcement before we get started with questions, I just want to mention we have about 700 people logged on live for this webinar right now, and so I am dealing with literally hundreds of questions as they come in. There is no way that we're going to be able to answer every single question, so I'm going to prioritize the questions that have been asked a couple of times. If you have more specific questions, we will put up a slide at the end of the webinar that has email addresses and resources to contact our technical assistance partners, and you should do that and ask your more specific questions there. So now let's go ahead and get started with some of the Q&A. First question, I'll go ahead and give it to Brad. You were talking about the tax returns. I just want to clarify, are you talking about the federal or state tax returns for 2019?
Federal, please.
Sure, okay. So federal tax returns for the application. What types of IDs would qualify for the business owner ID on the application?
Driver's license, state ID, passport, consulate IDs, anything that a business owner, as an individual, that you use just to sort of substantiate who you are, all of those are going to be just fine for us.
Okay, great. And last question here for you, Brad, before I jump over to someone else. Should I use the capacity before or after COVID-19 restrictions on the application?
Good question. We would like for you to tell us the capacity that you had before, meaning the number of seats that you had in your space, because that then helps us to size the damage to the business that the pandemic has inflicted.
Okay, great. Thank you, Brad. A couple questions for Kara on eligibility. If I receive Paycheck Protection Program funding, am I still eligible to apply for this program?
Yes, businesses that received PPP funding are eligible, though they may be reviewed later in the line than businesses that have not received any form of assistance. The key way that we kind of judge the eligibility that the business owner should keep in mind is that we're obligated to ensure that nobody is receiving 2 grants for the same purpose. So no double dipping, as we say it. So if you've only lost $50,000 and you are going to apply for a forgivable PPP grant for $50,000 because that's what you received, you cannot apply in this case for our grant. However, we do know that many businesses have experienced losses in excess of what they may have received in PPP, and so we are not prohibiting you from applying. If you go to our landing page for the big grant, there is a document about what we call duplication of benefits that provides a little more detail on how we instruct business owners to think about any other federally funded grants that you have received, but we are not prohibiting you from applying, and we are not going to be requesting, for example, documentation of your PPP loan.
Great, thank you. So to follow up on that question, if you receive funding in big round 1, can you apply for round 2?
Yes, you are eligible to apply for round 2. Similarly, we will be prioritizing those businesses that haven't received any form of assistance, but provided that you still have losses that are in excess of any support that you've already received, we welcome you to apply.
Thank you. Can nonprofit organizations apply, and are independent contractors considered employees for the application?
Nonprofit organizations are eligible to apply, and our detailed eligibility document that's posted on the big web page, as well as that first application screen that Brad showed you, tells you which 501c subsets are eligible. We've only prohibited ones that are prohibited in federal guidance, unfortunately. Independent contractors are only eligible if they are incorporated as a sole proprietorship and submit as a sole proprietorship with their status being the employee of the business. I will flag that the comments that I made previously about duplication of benefits. If you've received pandemic unemployment insurance as an independent contractor, that would be another form of benefit that you should keep in mind cannot be duplicated with this grant.
Great, thank you. And another question for Brad. I know you touched on this, but I've gotten this question dozens of times, and I just want to be extra clear on it. If I have not filed my 2019 taxes yet, can I still apply, and what should I use instead?
You can still apply. You'll be asked to answer a question in which you say either yes or no, I have filed my 2019 taxes, or I have not. And obviously, in a circumstance, you just say, I have not. In that case, then you'll be asked to provide one of things. Either just an attestation that you're relatively, in fact, quite small business and your revenues are very small. In this case, you're talking, I think, as Kara just mentioned a minute ago, an independent contractor who, as a side gig, has generated a little bit of revenue for small businesses, for their small business, to supplement the other revenue that they generate through a different job. I think in those cases where revenue is less than $5,000, say, then all you'll be asked to do is just to attest to that. If, on the other hand, you have a larger small business and you do have a substantial amount of revenue, and yet you have not signed and filed a 2019 tax return, then we'll be asking for you to make sure that you provide the business bank statements that we're looking for in order for us to review those, comparing 2019 to 2020, so that then we can estimate on the bank statements the differences in pre-pandemic and post-pandemic revenues. We clearly would like to use the tax returns, but we understand that if they aren't available, then we won't have them, in which case we're just going to have to make a judgment elsewhere.
Great, thank you. Is there a way for an applicant to mail in an application, or is the only application online?
The only application is online, and we're doing that specifically just because we're just trying to be cognizant of the fact that in a social distance environment, in an environment in which we're trying to make sure that we eliminate the passing of paper, which has its own, I think, health implications, that we just really encourage everybody to use the online application. And that is why we have partners like ABIC and many others to help make sure that any small business owner who is struggling with filling out an online application, doesn't have the technology capability, has people to help them to make sure that they can, in fact, for their business, get an application uploaded online.
Great. Could you quickly go through some of the important dates and the timeline? So when is the deadline to apply? And when someone applies, how soon can they expect to hear back from the state? And how soon can they expect to have the money in their account?
Sure. So the application is open currently. It opened on Thursday afternoon, and it will stay open until all of the funds for this grant are exhausted. We will be reviewing applications on a weekly basis. So as Brad indicated, based on the eligible funding pools and priority designations, we'll be reviewing all applicants that have submitted within the week at once and make decisions from that perspective. We'll be seeking then to review the majority of those applications within the first 2 weeks of submission, and you're likely to hear back regarding that status then within 30 days from submission. Our goal here will be transparency, and so we have received a high volume of applications, and so if it will start to look like it's going to take us longer, we'll be able to email applicants that information. I'll pass the question to Brad about, how long it takes once you've received notice that you'll receive a grant to receive the funds. But my understanding is that's relatively quickly.
That's right. The method through which the grant funds are going to be distributed is that once we've identified that you are an eligible applicant, you therefore have been notified that a grant is on the way, we then will be using ACH, an electronic transfer of funds, in order to put those dollars directly into your bank account based on the bank account information that you provided us in the application. And therefore, you should expect within 5 business days at the absolute slowest, and usually it's more like 2, to be receiving the dollars once you've been notified. So let's say 5 business days at the worst, usually faster.
Great, thank you both on that one. This is a question I've gotten a lot. Brad, can you give some guidance if a business has multiple locations on which one they should use for their application, or should they submit multiple applications?
Yes, good question. So if a single business with a single incorporated entity, single business owner, has multiple locations, then you do need to select one location to use for your application, because each business is only eligible for one grant. If, on the other hand, you, as a small business owner, run multiple businesses and they're incorporated individually, then you can apply multiple times for each individual business once. Now, you're not going to be able to win more than one grant, but if you'd like, you can apply more than one time for those multiple businesses. If you are applying for a single business which has multiple locations and you're trying to figure out which location should I select, the guidance there I would suggest to you is that if one of those locations is in a disproportionately impacted area, again, the map for which is on the DCEO landing page, that's the last thing you'll see down there, then I would encourage you to apply for that business location, because again, there's a very specific set aside for that. Similarly, if you have say a Chicago-based business and a downstate-based business, because there's a specific set aside for businesses that are outside of Chicago and the Collier counties. It would make sense, I think, to apply using that business location that is downstate, because there is that very specific set aside for that purpose. If, in the alternative, you just have multiple businesses that don't really meet any of those set aside criteria, and you're just trying to select which of the locations is most appropriate, then in that case, I would suggest that you just select the location which has suffered the greatest losses and use that as the basis for the application, even though you'll be applying essentially for the whole of the business throughout the locations if it's incorporated as a single business.
Great, thank you. What is the range of the grant amounts that can be awarded, and how do you determine the size of the grant that a business will get?
The range of grant amounts will range from $5,000 on the small end to a maximum of $150,000. And those amounts will be proportionate to the business size and the amount of revenue that that business can demonstrate that they have lost based on their application. And so for businesses that are not in the heavily impacted industries, we will scale the grant award to the revenue losses from the previous year shown by the statements for July and August that are submitted. For businesses within the heavily impacted industries, we'll be scaling this award to the basic costs of operation that we see from the documents that are submitted. So that includes the rent or mortgage statement, the utility statement, et cetera. And we'll be seeking to cover those costs entirely for the 2 months that are submitted.
Great, thank you. Another question about eligibility. Are franchise businesses, to use an example from one of the submitted questions, like a Baskin Robbins, eligible to apply?
Yes, I believe so. This is one that they were eligible for the first round of BIG, and I don't want to speak out of turn, but that information is in the detailed eligibility document that's posted on the DCO website. I believe they are also eligible for round 2, but they would not necessarily receive priority as an independent business.
Okay, great. This is a little bit of a specific question, but I think that it might be useful for other people to hear. My business is not in a DIA, but we do after-school care for many families who do live in DIAs. Is there some way that we can highlight this on the application?
For the purpose of the grant application, we consider the location of your business. And so unfortunately, even though you may serve families that are located in DIAs, you would not be considered as located in the DIA for the purpose of this grant.
Okay, thank you. And is the grant income taxed like income for next year, or how will that work on the back end?
Yes, the grant proceeds are taxable. The application requires you to submit the W-9 form, and so that's how it is recorded as taxable income for this year.
Okay, great, thank you. A couple of questions on which industry a specific company might want to select. A software company, what industry should they say that they belong to?
I would say that a software company would generally be categorized as a professional service.
Okay. And then a hair salon, what would you say that one would fit into?
apologies, I'm looking at the drop down once more. I believe personal care is still an option, and in that case, I would register that as a personal care service. Why don't we go down to the next one, and I'll double check to make sure what the drop down options are.
Okay. A taxi company, would that fit under tourism or travel?
I would record a taxi company as transportation within the general business industry. That would not necessarily be a tourism component.
Okay, perfect. And I just want to be very clear with this question. Are you automatically considered in round 2 if you applied for round 1 but didn't get it, or do you need to submit another application?
If you applied in round 1 and did not receive the grant, you do need to resubmit your application. And sorry, to jump back to the question about hair care, a beauty service, I would put that under other services within the business industry category.
Okay, thank you. And then just to reiterate, make sure that you are reapplying even if you applied for round 1 but then didn't receive funds. If someone owns 2 businesses, can a single person apply for 2 different businesses?
Yes, if you own 2 separate businesses, you can apply separately with respect to those independent businesses.
Okay, great. And then our last question here, if I file my taxes with an ITIN, am I eligible to apply for this program?
Yes, tax filers that have an ITIN are eligible to apply.
Great, thank you very much. And thank you to all our panelists, and that will wrap up our Q&A. I know we did not answer every single question. Like I said, we were getting literally hundreds. So I will turn it back over to Larry, and please contact your technical assistance partners to make sure you're having your specific questions answered. Larry?
Thanks, James, and thanks everyone for participating in the question and answer. We want to thank everybody for attending our webinar to learn more about the Business Interruption Grant. There's a slide up that shows your local technical assistance organizations, and if you need any other additional assistance, please, you can also reach out to me at lluster@americanbic.biz. But reach out to your local TA partners, and they should be able to help you out. Thank you all so much for attending.
I also just want to point out, it may be possible that you can't see some of the links on this last slide here, but they are there, so you can download this PowerPoint as a PDF and use those links, and we will also be sending this PowerPoint out to everybody at the end of the webinar as well.
And then finally, I'll encourage everyone to also make use of those links that you find in the application for the help desk, because on top of all of these great support organizations, we'll also seek to provide good answers to your questions through that help desk.
All right, everyone. Thanks so much for attending.